Welcome to the Daily Drum on WHUR 96.3, 96.3 HD2s, and Sirius XM Channel 141. I'm Bramante Bryant in for Harold Fisher. This is the Insight segment. Fraudsters, con artists, drug dealers, corrupt, derogatory words to herald at anyone, yet alone an entire group of people. My guests this evening say they often hear those terms and they want to dispel the stereotypes and myths often said about Nigerians. A powerful documentary will drop next week that offers a perspective beyond the headlines on what it means to be a Nigerian living in America. Joining me for the conversation tonight is Oluyinka Davids. He's the creator and director of the documentary Perception, the Nigerian Narrative, and Gbenga Ogunjimi, Executive Director of the Nigerian Center. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start here with a couple of some fast facts. One, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, there are approximately 350,000 Nigerians living in the United States. Nigerians in the U.S. are among the most highly educated immigrant group, with 61% 25 and older holding at least a bachelor's degree, which is significantly higher than the general U.S. population rate. Median household income for Nigerian Americans is about $69,000 a year, higher than the median household income for all U.S. households. Nigerian Americans have significant populations in cities such as Houston, New York City, Washington, D.C., and Atlanta. And according to some studies, 60% of Nigerian immigrants in the U.S. are naturalized citizens. So again, that's just some of the facts that we will start our conversation off with. So Gbenga, let's begin by discussing first the derogatory labels that are often placed on Nigerian immigrants in the United States. And I've named some of them at the top. Is that accurate in what I've said? And if those are used, why do you think those stereotypes are placed on Nigerians here in the U.S. and abroad, if you see it that way?
Well, Bramante, I want to thank you for leading with those great positive highlights about our community. And I think that I should be upfront. You will never catch me say anything negative about Nigeria. I would not be giving validity. I would not be validating, those criticisms or negative comments people say about our community. But what I can say is Nigeria truly has a perception issue. And we've not done a great job in controlling or honing the narrative. We've taken a neutral posture when negative stereotypes are being positioned or directed towards our community. And I think that, nature abhors vacuum. Someone has to fill it with something. And I think that is what we are doing to change and control that narrative. The narrative and the facts that you put forward are absolutely facts. We are one of the most powerful immigrant groups in this United States. We make significant contributions like every other communities like never before. Nigeria is the largest country for Black people around the world. If you think about the superpower of being Black, if you think about the contribution of people of color have made to the world, you are actually talking about who a Nigerian is, particularly Nigerian American. We now say Nigeria is the new Black excellence, and the future is definitely Nigerian American.
So why do you think, Gbenga, those stereotypes have surfaced? Because often what you hear is they may be derogatory, but folks may see there may be an inkling of truth in stereotypes, and that's where they germinate from. And I'm not saying that's the case here, but sometimes that's the general thought that it's coming from some place. And so those stereotypes that I've mentioned, and there may be others that you want to offer, why are they there, in your opinion?
Well, I think whatever you concentrate on magnifies. And you can choose what aspects of a coin. There's always two sides to a coin, right? And it depends on which aspect you decide to magnify. Are they experienced? Are they human? Are they, let's say this, are they negative human experiences? Are they in any part of the world with any group of people in the world? The answer to that is absolutely true. Are they negative human experiences coming from Nigerians or Nigerian Americans? Folks may have experienced having a normal human interaction. The answer is definitely that is correct. Now, does that define, though, an entire race or group of people? That would be absolutely false, and there will be no truth to that. So I think that that's the answer. People have definitely experienced negative interactions when dealing with some people who happens to be Nigerian. There could be any other person from any part of the world. But I think the greatest damage or negative stereotype that has really festered for so long is when we Nigerians ourselves acquiesce and actually gives validity to those experiences, those siloed or specific experiences someone may have, and not intentionally control the narrative. And I think this is what this documentary is doing a fantastic job and putting the authority back in the hands of Nigerian and Nigerian Americans to really control and change that narrative. Are these experiences factual? Yes, that may be true, but have you also considered all the experiences that you might not have considered before? And I think the producer of this documentary we hear from did a phenomenal, fantastic, extraordinary job in doing justice to that.
And I guess you're talking about Oluyinka, who was right here with us, creator of the documentary, The Perception, the Nigerian Narrative. What is that narrative and what should it be, Oluyinka? Oluyinka, excuse me.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Gbenga, for the amazing compliment. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here to talk about our project. As Gbenga said, I think every community have two sides. You know, there are good and bad people everywhere in the world, and I personally think it is sort of exaggerated when it comes to Nigerians. And let me reveal to you one of the things that I think would shock people about this documentary is we researched and realized that the actual Nigerian prince that is being referred to, because when you talk to people, the first thing they come to you, about is, okay, the Nigerian prince. Are you the Nigerian prince? Are you gonna scam me and all of that? The actual Nigerian prince is actually not a Nigerian. I'm telling you, you will be shocked. So
Okay,
all
now
of this information.
I'm going to stop you only to be sure the audience understands and I understand. You're saying Nigerian prince, as in prince, princess,
Yes,
king, queen, correct?
the origin of it. I mean,
Okay, and so I haven't heard that story. So is there a story of a Nigerian prince or some
yes,
mythological? Okay, well,
yes.
you're informing
It's
me.
online. It's
Okay.
online. If you go online and type Nigerian prince, there was a
Mm-hmm.
white guy that was arrested some times ago here in America who was pretending to be a Nigerian, sending fraudulent email to people, to deceive and get money from them. He is not Nigerian. But guess what? We get the feedback as Nigerians. I mean, it's so sad you get to a point where you're having normal conversation with someone, everything is going fine until they ask you where you're from, and you say, "Oh, I'm Nigerian," or maybe from the accent too. And then they'll be like, "Okay." And then the conversation changes almost immediately because they have to double check and be careful with you, what they say, what they do, and so that really, as a Nigerian, that saddens me a lot because I mean, it's not all of us that are fraudulent. There are a lot of amazing Nigerians that I know, even here in America, that are doing super amazing job in their various industries, and that is one of the things that this documentary is here to uncover.
Benga, you said earlier that some of the greatest damage is when within Nigerian culture, maybe those stereotypes within the culture sort of get accented too often. I'm interested in what you think as Nigerians come into America and then interact with Black Americans, right, who are native to this country, who say were born in this country. There's also a perception within this group of Black people, right, where Nigerians may have of Black Americans and Black Americans have of Nigerians or just Black people who come from the continent. I want to get your take on that, because I know you've heard from some Black Americans who will look at those who come from the African continent and say, man, maybe you guys think you're better than us. You come over here with money already. You're buying up the houses. You've got these degrees, you're doctors, you're engineers. Is that part of the perception also on both sides?
So I think the reality is Black people living in America contend with a higher adversary of external forces who truly never want to see unity happens and us becoming one unit, because that is truly our superpower. I look at African American community, I look at them as the future for Africa, for Nigeria. I look at Nigeria and the rest of Africa as the foundation for Black America. And I think the world is yet to see the impact, the fullness of that when it becomes amalgamated and becomes a singular unit. So that is why you will see all these stereotypes and all these messaging walls against our community. The only thing I would admit about Nigerian being guilty of is the way we carry ourselves. And I think, and not necessarily realizing that, hey, you are also dealing with a different culture here. But really, I think there's a distinction with the Nigerian American. And I think it's rooted in the knowledge of identity and culture, that they have the opportunity, that is all that they know. Now, if you see the way they assert themselves, the authority, their power, their superpower, their confidence is just rooted in culture. It's rooted in their cultural identity and being connected to their heritage. And I think that may come across as folks may interpret that, somehow. But I think the missed opportunity we're not looking at is, let's look at the possibilities that is going to happen when both communities start coming together to become one. One of the things we did, and we are doing at the Nigerian Center, that we recently signed a partnership with African Ancestry, the largest ancestry DNA tracing for people of color. And now, if you do your DNA test with African Ancestry, you can take Nigerian classes in Hausa, Igbo, Yoruba at the Nigerian Center. And the group is preparing to go to Nigeria in February, in January, early next year. So you begin to see how we are really giving that reconnection back to our family members in America in ways in which we have never seen before. So, and the way I say it is, whether you came to this great country 400 years ago, 40 years ago, or 4 years ago, I would like to see you as Nigerian American. Your DNA confirms it. We look alike. We may sound differently. We walk the same way. We socialize. We carry ourselves. We speak with power and authority the same way. We see ourselves as one single family. And I think we have to stop validating external forces and opinion against our community. True. And I think this is what we're here to do.
Before we go to break, I should say, for full disclosure, I did an ancestry.com, right? And sort of did my thing. And 25% it comes back, I'm part of the tribe. It has me as Nigerian. So I've got to throw that in there, even though I'm stopped all the time and asked, am I Ethiopian? So I don't know. Someone said it's, I'm terrible with geography, but I think it's somewhere. Someone said, well, there's a tribe in Ethiopia that's close to Nigeria, but we'd have to talk about that off the air. But I can't tell you how many folks ask me, am I Nigerian? I mean, not Nigerian, but Ethiopian. But listen, we're going to take a break. I want to talk about this issue of immigration and this thing going on in Springfield, Ohio, and Haitians, and how that may intersect with what we're talking about tonight about Nigerians, and get more into the success of the Nigerian community here in the United States, and a bunch of other stuff that I think is worthwhile to talk about. But hang tight. We're going to continue this conversation in just a minute. Don't forget, you can hear every edition of the Daily Drum Insight segment via podcast on WHUR.com, or you can download the 96.3 HD2 app on your smartphone and hear the program live in its entirety This conversation continues online and on SiriusXM channel 141 and 96.3 HD2. The original Quiet Storm is next on 96.3 WHUR. Welcome back to the Daily Drum on SiriusXM channel 141, 96.3 HD2. I'm Bramante Bryant in for Harold Fisher. This is the Insight segment. Oluyinka, I wanted to ask about, I'm sure you've been following the story regarding the Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio, and the Republican nominees for president and vice president, and this story about these Haitian immigrants allegedly eating cats and dogs. The story has resoundingly been proved to be false, yet those two candidates are still saying it's happening. In fact, former President Trump has said we've got to get these immigrants out of the country. We've got to get them out of here. A representative from Louisiana recently posted and pulled down his tweet. He called Haitian immigrants in Springfield thugs, said now they're trying to be all sophisticated. Many folks took that as a blanket statement about any black person coming from any predominantly black country coming into America. So I'm not asking you to break down all of what's going on in that story, but I'm sure you've heard it. And I'm wondering what you and Gbenga's thoughts are on this. And do you see any parallels to the issue of Nigerians and Nigerian Americans and their plight in the United States and what's happening with Haitian Americans, at least in Springfield, and now from a broader context, immigration here in America? I'll throw that question out to you, Oluyinka.
I think I'll let Gbenga go first.
Okay. Gbenga, you take that and run with it.
Yes, we've been following that very closely. And should I say I am extremely proud of the nonprofit Asian Bridge Alliance for the leadership they've shown about this issue and advocating and defending their community. I don't know if you are aware yet, but this nonprofit and several civil society nonprofit organizations have actually filed a lawsuit against former President Trump and his vice president nominee against this particular issue, and that actually been elevated to criminal charges lawsuit against that leadership. And I think the significance of this is the greatest tragedy is when the righteous is doing nothing. And when there are stereotypes that are intentionally may potentially cause harm and danger, and those who are directly impacted by that keep quiet and they say nothing. And I think that has been the reality of many immigrant groups, particularly those who come from Black majority country like ours, that we've not always responded and asserted our community's voice, when this type of forces are coming at us. So we all saw the debate, we heard the debate, we saw what was happening, but the community response that we're seeing, but even more importantly, non-Black people living in those communities also coming to rally around this community and say, this is not who they are. And we look at the contribution folks from that country has made, not just to America, I'm talking about 80 now, not just to America, but the rest of the world. The fact that it was this great country that started liberation movement for Black people in freedom and leadership that has a ripple effect to the wave of independence we saw in America, in African countries, and even colonial settlements all across the world. And we see the global change of the dynamic of people of color put on the low and the totem pole when it comes to power and legal power structure. It was this country that led that efforts and showed that leadership. And we see the contribution they made to this great country, the United States. And the fact that that community has been demonized a particular way, I am proud of that nonprofit and how people have really rallied around behind them. So I think for us, though, in the Nigerian American community, we also have the same effect where people may have this negative stereotype against us. And that is why we associated with this project Perception, the Nigerian narrative, because we are so thrilled with the masterful production of this documentary and the opportunity to help crystallize and architect a new language and vocabulary for people of color to define themselves and not just acquiescing to what the world think they are. This is an opportunity. When you see this documentary, I say it comes down to three words: the Nigerian spirit. We are changing the narrative from the Nigerian prince to the Nigerian spirit.
Nigerian
And we're
spirit.
talking about the people who know who they are. And they are not really interested in your validation and in your opinion of who they are. And they are letting you now know with this documentary, this is our story. This is who we are. You are free. Opinion is free. You don't have to pay for it. The tragedy is then we co-sign and validate that. We're saying we're not doing that anymore. I don't think we ever did that. But now we're saying this is our own story. And thank you.
Exactly.
Thank you to this man right here who has really produced and created this documentary. It's not just for Nigerian. So every Black person come see the true
Yeah.
identity of what it means being Black.
I think it's
And
interesting when you said we're not
Okay.
interested or we don't need your validation. That's going to stick with me, and I want to follow up with that. But Oluyinka, I think you wanted to add something.
Yes, yes. I just wanted to add to what Gbenga said that, I mean, our main goal and with this documentary project is we hope that, you know, it will change the way that the world views Nigerians, you know, like we've said over and over that we've often been defined by negative stereotypes. But this documentary is also to show a different side of our community, you know, one of resilience, success, you know, and cultural richness, basically. And another goal that we have is not only to inspire Nigerians, but also to educate the world, you know, about the true contribution that, you know, our people, Nigerians, are contributing globally. And then, okay, go ahead.
No, you go finish your thought.
Oh, okay. And then we also hope that this series, you know, will be a catalyst for conversations, you know, that challenge old perceptions and build a new positive narrative, basically.
Let me give you an opportunity, Oluyinka, and
Yeah.
then you can do the same. And I think it would be interesting to know about your own personal experience, and it may be in the documentary that folks can see your
Okay.
own personal experience as a Nigerian immigrant. You know, can you share that, what that's been like for you? I'll start with you, Oluyinka.
Oh, okay. My experience has been very interesting. I mean, I've been opportunity to live in a couple of countries, and one thing that I know that is constant is um, you find Nigerians everywhere. You know, because of how we view things. And then when I came to the United States, I see a lot of opportunities, honestly. And the only one thing that I didn't feel comfortable with or like is just how, you know, the world perceive us, or the way the world will see me because I'm a Nigerian. You understand? So as a Nigerian filmmaker, I felt a deep personal responsibility to address how Nigerians are perceived globally, you know. And this project, you know, took us a couple of years to get to where we are.
Let me ask you real quick, if I can, before I
Okay.
lose that thought, because you said you lived in a couple of other countries, and I don't know if you're
Yeah.
willing to share those countries. And was the perception of Nigerians different in those other countries, or were you treated differently in those other countries than here in the United
No,
States? And can you share
it's
those
actually
other
the
countries?
same. It's actually the same. I lived in South Africa for like 5 years. I schooled partly in South Africa, and then I've also, you know, just briefly in Liberia as well, and then been to Ghana, Dubai. I've traveled to I think about 12, 13 countries altogether,
Mm-hmm.
and I see that the approach is the same pretty much.
So, so
So,
even in predominantly black countries like Ghana and Liberia, you're
oh
saying
yeah,
the perception of Nigerians
mm-hmm.
and some of those perceptions we've talked about already.
Yeah,
So basically, what you're saying, it's global.
yeah, it's global. Yes, it's global. It's pretty much the same, and I for sure that was one of the reasons why I actually decided to do this, because I'm like, okay, if it is the way it is right now, so what would happen with the generations that are coming behind us and all of that. And thank God for people like Gbenga right here, who threw in their support to make sure that this documentary came to life, with the Nigerian Center. And I really can't wait for people to hear our story, because I felt we are already at that point where we have to tell our story from our perspective. I mean, for oftentimes, the mainstream media have not been really kind, to telling Nigerian stories. So, and I feel, our story being told by us, it's different. And I really look forward, honestly, to people's reaction to what we've put together in this documentary series.
Benga, what about your story? I'm not sure of the age of both of you all, but how long have you been in this country? I'm assuming you're not a native, just because I hear your strong accent. So that's my only why I'm making that assumption. Uh, uh, Strong accent, but very clear. Let me say again about that. So, what's been your experience? What's your story, Benga? What's it been like for you here in the U.S. as an immigrant, or coming
Well,
in
I
as an
think I'm
immigrant, at least?
well, I think I'm blessed to be one of those leaders that had in their formative years that their parent their village told them, like, you're going out in the world, it doesn't matter what they call you. It is most important what you respond to and how you define yourself.
Yeah.
So, and as I said, I'm overly positive with Nigeria. I remember when Oluyinka had this conversation at the early days of this documentary. Thank God it didn't completely go with my point of view. It's going to be everything positive about Nigeria. I just
Yeah.
don't see, and I don't really entertain. Um, yeah, so really, I came through a State Department program. My experience is not as typical. It's a little bit more structured with a lot of opportunities. So, and that kind of somewhat shielded the type of experience I had, that I had everything I would need professionally, financially, a program. There's a community that was curated for us. We had local ambassadors. We had everything that we needed. So that was the kind of the paradigm I had coming to America, and that just kind of stayed with me ever since. And I remember this defining moment in my program, and we are considering this concept of international identity. And there were folks from every part of the world, from Colombia, Russia, Nigeria, Iran, like all these hot button topics in Washington, D.C., right? And they told us to define or introduce ourselves, our country, and everybody in the room led with something negative. And they led assuming that the audience already had those perception and those negative stereotype, like what happened on this call when Oluyinka said Nigerian prince, and you said, tell me more. So people started by saying, oh, this is what we know, you think about us this way.
Mm.
And I recall the conversation went to, but what do you want us to know about where you're from? Not what you think, the preconceptions we have about you. And for me, that was a defining moment, that every opportunity I had in this country going forward is my opportunity to change perception or to even crystallize positive perception people may already have about my country. And that for me is more important with the perception experiences people may have. I think the greater damage is when I now begin to validate as a Nigerian and co-sign what those narrative or misconception they may have about myself. So that truly has been my story. And every day I'm thankful for my heritage, the knowledge of my ancestry, the knowledge of my heritage, being Nigerian. And I'm so grateful to be the founder and the director of the Nigerian Center, a center that can really help elevate our messaging, our story, and our culture than we have ever seen before up until now. So I think that has been my Nigerian American story, and I really sticking to it, as they say in America. Isn't that
That's
how you
my
say
story. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
it?
You know,
Exactly.
we're talking about the perception of Nigerian Americans and Nigerians in general, and we kind of touched on this earlier. At least you did, Benga, and I kind of want to come back to it because I really am very interested to know, and I don't think this is just particular to Nigerians, but those who come from the African continent and come to America and their perception of African Americans. And I think one of the perceptions out there is that those who come from quote unquote the motherland look at African Americans as kind of like, hey, do you know how good you've got it here? Or maybe you complain a little bit too much. You know, you aren't working hard enough. You seem to like not want to take the jobs that are out there for you to take to get to where you want to go. Is there something to that, Benga and Oluyinka? And it's okay if you believe it is. It's only radio.
Well, I can go first. And I would say that, my son is Nigerian American. My wife is African American. I say I'm Nigerian, right?
Mhm.
and the reason I said that is it's just so beautiful what we can truly give to the world when both cultures come to like my family is. And someone like my son who sees himself 100% African American and 100% Nigerian American, and there is no division. The paradigm such a generation we have in the world. I would definitely agree that we come here and we see opportunities we don't have where we're coming from, and we say you are truly blessed. I don't know about the other things you said after that, but I would say I would I would agree and say that you are truly blessed. And for me, we look at the possibilities, right? One of the things the world celebrate right now is Afrobeat. And the founder and the creator of Afrobeat is Fela, right? Fela is a Nigerian man, a Yoruba man that started his music career in Nigeria, but the fullness of what he gave to the world was incomplete until he came to America, until he went to California, the West Coast, and he interacted in the 60s during the civil rights movement and the American soul pop culture, and he was able to fuse that with African traditional music. And he created a whole new genre and shared that with the world. And that genre is now winning Grammys and is now a major cultural fabric of our communities. But that did not happen until 100% African Nigerian content mixed with 100% American Black American community. So I think when we concentrate on those possibilities, it completely pales in comparison with I don't like you, I don't like the way you sound, you walk this way, you sound this way. Those are so trivial matters to the possibility we like to slide and go out of our reach when we truly can see what truly we can give to the world. So I've shared my family story. I went into historical perspective, even to the current day realities, to see contributions.com, that when we begin to fuse our contributions, our communities together, and really stop validating these trivial experiences about what someone think. We don't really have to entertain that. It's just an opinion. At the end of the day, it's not the truth.
And just to follow up real quick on that, have you seen any kind of difference in the relationship with immigrants from other African countries in within the Nigerian community. What's that like? What's that relationship like? Is there a oneness, or is it like in any, whether you're in Europe, if you're coming from different countries, people come with different cultures, different values. Just because everyone's black doesn't mean they have the same kind of approach to the world or to living. How would you characterize the relationship of the Nigerian community with communities of other Africans coming from other parts of the continent?
Well, I know Nigerian is. Um, I know Nigerian. There's a distinction to the way we believe in who we are and our role in this world. Um, and you know, I think the greatest opportunity for someone who come from Nigeria, from any other African countries, and I know Americans have the same experience when they have the opportunity to travel and visit. If you grew up in a country that predominantly looks like you, your president, your leadership, your everyday human interaction just look like you are the symbol and reflection of leadership and success. It affects your paradigm. It changes the way you see the world. um, that is just a fact. And when people go from America to any parts of the country, that is the experience. Like, wow, so it's possible that the essential institutions that makes up a country can be 100% leadership of people of color. They are not in the minority. Um, and if you live in a country whereby not only are you the majority, but it is almost predominantly who you are, it changes your outlook in the world. And I think that is the way I personally see it.
Let's talk a little more about this documentary, uh, Oluyinka. Part of what's in there and the trailer, just the trailer, was fascinating. Just to see so many people that you had in that 3.5 minutes. Those different voices that were coming in. But a couple of things that struck me is one of the lines that was said: "The world sees us through a fragmented lens."
Yeah.
And I know you've kind of talked about that already, but I thought just that line was
Okay.
so poignant. The world sees us through a fragmented lens. Tell me what you mean by that, or not necessarily you. I couldn't remember if that was a voiceover or if one of those who was involved
Yeah.
said that.
Yeah. It's a voiceover actually.
Hmm.
And what I meant by that is I personally feel that the world is not seeing the entire story. And that is because of the way we have been presented. Like I said earlier, I personally believe that the mainstream media has not been very kind to the way they report, news that has Nigeria in it. You know what I mean? So, and that is why we have a project like this where our story is being told by us and things are being seen from our perspective. So this documentary shows a different side of Nigeria that I think the world needs to see. Remember in the beginning, I think Gbenga mentioned that in every community there are two sides. There's two sides to a coin, right? The good and the bad. So I think the world is used to the bad side of Nigerians because anywhere the name Nigeria is mentioned, it's often associated with negativity and stuff like that. But we are very intentional about turning the lens to the other side of Nigeria and Nigerians as a people and a community, showing and paying attention to our resilience, our successes, and cultural richness, which I believe it's actually more, than the negativity. So a lot of people spoke about these things in the documentary in various chapters because he has about 9 chapters in the series, and I am glad that we were able to address those issues like in details, and we're able to show the world why we are sure about saying that Nigeria is not just about fraud and negativity. We are amazing people. We are good people. And we cannot be judged or painted, with a brush of negativity just because of what people see on the news about us.
Gbenga, cultural identity, and Oluyinka can correct me if I'm wrong,
Mhm,
is one of the central themes of the documentary.
mhm,
What would you say are some of the unique challenges that Nigerians in the diaspora face in balancing their heritage, right, with
mm.
the realities of living here in the U.S.?
Well, I think it comes down to every Black human experience. Um, Around the world, no matter any country you go to and you talk to Black people, I think the experience is the same. Whether they are not American enough, they are not European enough, they are not African enough, the Nigerian diaspora, whether they are not Nigerian enough or whether they are not American enough. I think it's just a Black human experience that to straddle both identities, and I think that can be a challenge for every Black person anywhere that you go to. Um, and I think that the opportunity to asset frame that experience is what we are for at the Nigerian Center and why we're involved in this project. I remember in Washington, D.C., our congressional shadow representative is Dr. Oye Owolewa, Nigerian American, um, in the nation's capital. And I remember during one of his campaign messages, he said that when he was knocking on doors and campaigning, people told him, "You have a foreign first name, you have a foreign last name. How do I, why should I vote for you? But I'm going to support you because I know this. My professor is a Nigerian. My dentist is a Nigerian. My accountant is a Nigerian. My pharmacist is a Nigerian." And I think that when you start to amplify that, we can have this conversation all day. And I'm going to come back to the same point. Like, I'm personally not that interested in those negative stereotypes, other than to counter the narrative and to assert and to amplify truly what I think we stand for, the contributions that we're making. Like, if
And
you look at this, go ahead.
well, before I want to be sure because we're getting close to the clock on time. I want to be sure that folks know about this documentary, where they can see it, when they can see it, and if I can have Oluyinka sort of tell us where it's going to be shown initially, the screening, what time. Can you share that with us before we close out the show, Oluyinka?
Okay, yes, yes, yes. So, on October 1st, which is next week Tuesday. It happens to be the Nigerian Independence Day, and at the same time, the Nigerian American Day in Washington D.C. Right? Correct me if I'm wrong, Gbenga. And then, so we saw this as a great opportunity to premiere the documentary officially. So, like I said, it's a documentary series of 9 chapters, and we want to premiere just chapter one on October 1st, which happens to be the official premiere. And then shortly, very soon, we are at the verge of finalizing a global distribution deal with one of the popular, I don't want to mention their name yet. So, but I know that very soon it will be available for the world to see what we have put together over time. Yeah.
Okay, and so the screening is going to be where here in DC?
Yeah, it's at Miracle Theater in Washington, D.C.
All right. Oluyinka Davids, creator and director of The Perception, the Nigerian Narrative, and Gbenga Ogunjimi, executive director of the Nigerian Center. Thank you both for sharing your knowledge, your perspective, your history,
Thank
and
you.
being open to a conversation. Obviously, where stereotypes aren't always a great thing to talk about, but to get to the truth, you have to sort of get through those stereotypes and talk about those. So thank you so much for joining us, and best of luck with the documentary and all that you're doing in the community.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
having us on here.
Thank you. That is the Daily Drum for this Friday, September 27th. I'm Bramante Bryant, in for Harold Fisher. Have a great night.